culture. So one of the things that your office has is your office has amazing culture. And Mark, that's why I asked you to be on the podcast today. So for those of you that have maybe never met Mark Roberts has an amazing office here in Kansas City. And you've got this amazing staff that you've built from your early days of just Mark to building out this staff. Now we'll get a staff count here in a second. But you've got this amazing full-service practice. And one thing that I've always really respected and love about your practice is the fact that you have this office culture that it is like a financial street gang. When you all travel, when we have events or we go places, you guys are together and you're tight and it's not fake. You can tell that it's real. And I know that tons of advisors that are going to be listening to this podcast would give their left toe to have that kind of culture. And that kind of culture doesn't happen by accident. So let's do this. So we're going to talk about culture in your office and how you got there, but a rough overview of your office, of your practice. So it's not like it's you and maybe your mom is working for you. You've got this full staff, multiple advisors. How big is the staff?
So right now we have 12. We have 9 people not in sales and 3 people in sales, me included, me and 2 other guys. And then we have 9 people not in sales. We're a big believer sales is important, but we're a big believer of keeping the clients that we sell to on the books and keeping them clients for long term. So it takes a team to be able to manage the existing book of business. Absolutely.
So with that said, so having that much staff, one thing that you also are a big believer in, and I get it wrong because I don't have hair, but it's what they say on the shampoo bottles, lather, rinse, repeat. Is that how you people with hair do it? I don't remember anymore.
Lather, rinse, repeat.
So I know one of the other things, if you've never met Mark or heard him speak, you are a huge believer in processes. And I'm going to paraphrase one of them, but simplify and replicate. Just bam, 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 bam. You can walk into a meeting, you know what that meeting is about, what needs to be done in that meeting, and then you can move like you do, and that's why your practice is as big as it is. But getting a staff and getting a culture to be able to go along with that, where do you start? How do you build culture? And to you, when I say culture, how do you define office culture?
Maybe just the camaraderie that we have inside the office and outside the office. It's how you treat each other, how you talk to each other, how you handle their successes or their failures or their good days, their bad days. It's how you treat each other. That, to me, is the culture. I think everybody in my office knows that I would step in front of a bullet for them. But I also honestly feel that they would do the same thing for me. And I think that starts with me. I think everything has always started with me, and the example that I set, I think everybody seems to follow very well. And if I treat them the way I want to be treated, I think in return they turn around and treat me the way that they want to be treated. And I think that's part of the culture, just good people with good chemistry.
Yeah.
But keep in mind, I've also made mistakes along the way, too.
Sure.
And I had to learn from those mistakes that I've made, mistakes in hiring, mistakes in how I maybe handled situations. But I consider myself a perfectionist, and a perfectionist isn't somebody who is perfect. A perfectionist is somebody who doesn't like to make mistakes and is quickly willing to auto-correct and try not to make that same mistake twice.
You just mentioned hiring. So how do you find the right people? That's got to be a big part of where it starts, right? You can't build a sandcastle with mud. So where are you finding sand?
I would say over the years when we were really tiny, we were finding people through the newspaper. We were finding people through any way that we could, through referrals to Indeed.com, things like this. We haven't hired in a long time. We don't need to. As we continue to grow production, we continue to also find ways to be more efficient, so we don't need more people to keep up with our production because we're being more efficient. But back in the day, we had to do that. Back in the day when we were smaller, and I was very integral part of the hiring process and looking for people, and I would be on every interview. I learned from it. You just learn as you go. I was never trained in college or trained in business on how to be somebody who's a good interviewer, what questions to ask, what questions not to ask, what's politically correct to ask, and what you should and shouldn't ask. I don't know those things. I had to kind of learn it along the way. But something I've honestly believe I found that was the most important thing out of all of those lessons when it comes to hiring. People can be trained to do just about anything. But what you can't train is work ethic and personality. Mm-hmm. So I have found that whenever we do hire, that when we go through that process, all my questions are usually kind of generating somewhere around the areas of trying to figure out their work ethic and trying to figure out their personality. Because if you don't have good work ethic, if you don't have good personality, then we're not going to have good team chemistry.
Yeah, because you're going to be around somebody 8-9 hours a day and basically become a family, a work family. And if you can't stand being around that person from the get-go, that's going to be pretty tough.
And for us, we're 4 days a week, so we have 4 10-hour days. So we're around each other for 10 nonstop hours. But we also like to do things after hours. There are certain people in the office that hang out with certain people in the office, but then we all hang out together as well and get together for events. Mm-hmm. I love that.
Now, you guys do a lot of. When I said your team is tight, you guys are tight, because if you hit you on Facebook, you'll see pictures of you out with your team having a hell of a time, whether it's baseball games, nightclubs, dinners, the whole nine. How do you, with the hiring, I'm going to go back to the hiring because I find this fascinating, because you mentioned newspapers, and for some of our younger listeners, newspapers used to be distributed on every street corner, and you'd pay for them, and they were paper, and they used to be really thick. The Kansas City Star used to be so thick. Did you have a lot of success that way when you were looking for people and then moving to Indeed, or was it more referrals or word of mouth? Your better employees that you can think of, how'd you find them?
Well, honestly, just say it's a little bit of a mixed bag. I think you have to be willing to look for information in different places, mm-hmm. and don't just be reliant on one thing. But as time has gone on, I've been doing this now for 26 years, technology has advanced, and mm-hmm. things like the newspaper are maybe not as efficient as other things are more efficient. But I'll just pick on Missy. She's been with me for 15 years. She's my business manager, and she's single-handedly probably the number one person that I would say who's taught me how, if you hire the right person, how you can really grow, because she's an amazing person. She's amazing to everything in my personal and business life. But I found her through the newspaper 15 years ago. Huh. And then as I add on, just over time, we just did different things. And I have several people that work in our office that were actually referrals from other people, because I'm always interacting with other professionals like you, like creative, mm-hmm. And I need somebody with this skill set. And down the road, I get a referral, and that just ends up being the right person.
Yeah. So with when you bring somebody on, then do you have because your office now is big, so do you have a set training regimen all set up? Or how do you bring somebody on board?
Well, we're not some big corporate entity, and most financial advisors who listen to this they're small, and they're smaller than me. Mm-hmm. So no, there's no major training program. What I have is I just find the bigger you get, the easier it is to grow, because you have so much amazing people around you. So if you need to replace somebody for some reason, mm-hmm. good reasons or bad reasons, or you need to hire and just bring on an additional person, I have everybody else in that office that can train that person, and it doesn't have to be me. But when you're a smaller office and you're like a solo advisor or a solo advisor with one person, a lot of that training sometimes is burdened on you. So you got to mm-hmm. add more to your plate, put another hat on, train a new person, so that ultimately that person can take some of the hats that you're wearing off you. And who else is better to train them than you? But if you have one person, hopefully that one person will help you train the second person. If you have 1 and 2 people, hopefully 1 and 2 people help train that third person. Because there's going to be some crossover when you're small. Mm-hmm. And there's going to be multiple people wearing the same hats, doing similar things, but maybe some niches. And then as you grow and grow and grow, you can continue to define roles and separate things out a little bit more.
Yeah.
But today, the way I'm structured today, everything from administrative to operations to marketing to sales, I have people in specialty areas that if we need to add another person to any one of those areas, I have people that can help me train them. Will I be a little bit a part of it? Sure, just interacting. But there'll be a lot more training from others. So no, I would say the answer to your simple question with a long answer is no, there's no training procedure. There's no training module. You throw them in, and you do your best you can to give them some space, tell them what you need, show them how to do it, let them be creative and let them be themselves, and see if they can own that job and do that job better than you expected.
Now, how do you so I know the answer to this because I've heard you speak several times, and I think this is a great spot to have this part of the conversation, which is, how do you know when it's time to add somebody?
Okay, so for me, I've always said I measure everything in my office by Jamie in my office. Jamie is my director of operations. She is single-handedly responsible for every application of new business that we do, and sometimes just paperwork of moving accounts from one place to another. Jamie will single-handedly by herself throughout the year process anywhere from about $120 to $160 million of business every year.
Nice.
And she does it with not 40 hours a week. So when I see Jamie at overload capacity and we're bringing in that much business for that one person, then that tells me that puts us, marketing's doing a good job. That tells me sales is doing a good job. But the trickle effect is we're going to need to beef up Jamie's position in the paperwork side and the servicing side and the operation side of things. We're going to have to beef that up because the evolution is as we beef up one side, it's going to snowball into the other side of things that we need. So I think I always measure everything by Jamie.
She's your canary in a coal mine.
Kinda, but we also we implemented something a few years ago that's kind of cool, and I didn't know how it would work, but I had some intentions on it, and my intentions were good. But then after looking back on it, I think, that was actually a really good idea, and the intentions turned out to be fantastic. And so we didn't know what to call it. We just called it flex time. So everybody comes and works 7:30 to 5:30 for the most part. But I tell everybody, you're 4 days a week, 7:30 to 5:30. You can all leave at as early as 4 o'clock, so an hour and a half. So if it's 5, if it's 5:40, or it's 4:30, or it's 4 o'clock, you can leave as early as an hour and a half early every day, but as long as all 9 of you leave at the same time.
Interesting.
Meaning the salespeople, we come and go as we want. We work long hours. We work odd hours. I don't put any time constraints on the 1099 salespeople, but the W-2 non-salespeople, you're 7:30 to 5:30. So what that does is I'm asking them to, in the afternoon, as you're looking at your day and what's on your workload for that day, if you're caught up and think you're going to be caught up or whatever, send a message out to the office. Who needs help with what? What can I do to help you get done with your job so we can all get out of here as early as possible?
Nice.
Now, they will stay until the last appointment of the day comes in and gets checked in. So if we have somebody that's coming in at 4:30, then they can't leave until at least 4:30 and that client or prospect's checked in. But if there's no late appointments like that, they can leave as early as 4. So that's an hour and a half a day, 4 days a week. That's 6 hours a week. And that's a lot of times my staff is only working 34 hours a week. So when I know that they're working up until 5:30 every day and Jamie is processing the amount of business that she needs to process, that they're all staying and working until 5:30 every day, then that tells me then I can measure, we need to start to hire. But until then, that flex time is giving me a good way to measure, you guys aren't working a full 40. We don't need to hire yet.
Yeah.
Until you're all working for a full 40 and then Jamie's busting at the seams, then we're ready to hire.
How'd you come up with that?
I think it was just more of a reward. I just want people to know that, hey, salespeople kind of come and go. I want you guys to feel like you can kind of come and go. You work hard, work together. It promoted more team chemistry. It promoted more cross-training. And that was kind of the idea. Somebody's out for a long period of time, sick, or like somebody right now in our office is dealing with a family death, and they're out of the office for a period of time. We don't skip a beat. We just put a little bit more on a few other people's plates to help chip in and take that one person's job off their plate for a few days, and we just keep on moving. So it allows them to leave early. They love that. They don't work evenings. They don't work Fridays. They have 3-day weekends every weekend. Most of the time they're getting off as early as 4 every day. So they love it. And they work great together, and it, again, cross-training and camaraderie is what it promotes.
How'd you come up with the taking Fridays off, giving them the Friday?
Well, that was an easy one. So started the company when I was 22, bored, didn't have enough prospects, didn't have enough clients. I didn't know what to do. Yeah. I'm seeing clients back in those days in their homes. I'd have like a 4 o'clock, a 6 o'clock, and an 8 o'clock appointments in the evenings when they get home from work because I'm willing to take anybody at any time. And I didn't have an office. I'm working out of my home. And so I just learned real quickly that this is just not efficient for me. So I started playing golf. Started playing golf when I was 22. Fell in love with golf very fast. And Fridays can be my golf day, and I'm going to work a little harder Monday through Thursday, and I'm going to try to condense my schedule. So instead of long 5 days, I'm going to have longer 4 days. And then it just kind of got structured over time where it's Monday through Thursday, and we'll not have appointments on Friday. Now, the occasional salesperson in my office, they might work a Friday when we're busting at the seams and we have a huge marketing event where we have a huge number of turnout, and they're just trying to get people in. Yeah, they're willing to do that, but I won't ask that of my W-2 employees.
That is so cool. I can see you can just see these little things that you do, the consistency. making sure you're hiring good people. You talked, we were on stage once and you talked about, this is a little deviation off culture, but on hiring, that the mistake that I'll butcher this and then you clean it up, please. But the mistake that people make when they think about hiring staff, they see the annual cost or the annual instead of looking at it monthly. Can you walk us through that? Because I just messed it up.
Well, I think the average financial advisor is a financial advisor. But at the end of the day, we are more business owners than we are financial advisors. And I don't think we're ever trained how to be business owners. You didn't go to school for it. You don't go training for it. If you started with a captive company, they don't train you how to be a business owner. How to hire, how to fire, how to pay rent, what size square footage you need, what technology, training of people. You don't get trained for this stuff. We don't know these things. So we had to learn it along the way. So for me, I've learned especially again with Missy 15 years ago, that you hire a great person. She's going to take so much off your plate. She takes hats off my head that forces me to be a little bit more focused on the things that make the most money.
Yep.
And so with that, it's like, let's pretend you go to hire somebody and you got to pay them $60,000 a year. So the average advisor is like, oh, I can't afford to pay somebody $60,000 a year. Well, don't think of it as $60,000 a year. Think of it as $30,000 every 6 months. Think of it as $15,000 every 3 months. Think of it as $5,000 a month. Do you have enough money in your bank account, but you bring in a few sales? Do you think you can pay somebody $5,000 a month? Could you afford that? Well, then they start to rethink that. It sounds different, but $5,000 a month is the same as $60,000 a year. They're just not used to thinking that way.
Yeah.
So imagine you hire somebody, you get them trained. How long would it take you to get them to a spot where they're taking things off your plate, so that you can spend more time doing the things that you want to do as a financial advisor, selling, marketing, whatever it is, so that you can instantly replace that $60,000 salary to them with $60,000 more revenue to me, and I'm not out of pocket. What I'm doing is I'm growing because I brought in more sales to offset that person's salary. But you have to spend money to make money. And I think the average business owner, whether it's a financial advisor, just any business owner in general, I think they have to make money to spend money. And that's how they think. When I think the other way around is I find the really successful business owners will spend money to make money first.
I like it. That's good. That's good for advisors to definitely hear, because that is it. That is, you do tend to think. It's easy to think of that big number and then think, oh my gosh, how do we cover that? Okay, so you get the employee, you build the culture, you do the offsite. Now you guys do a lot of off-hour events. Talk a little bit about that, because you guys have a lot of fun together.
So we can be a little cliquish in our office. I mean, just because of personalities. Certain ladies like to hang out with certain ladies after hours because they have a lot of similarities. I tend to hang out with some of the guys, especially the salespeople. I play a lot of golf with the salespeople. Just has nothing to do with favoritism. It's just we have golf in common, and we love to play golf. But we like to do a lot of things together. We'll do parties together. I'll host parties. We'll do dinners outside the office. We'll do golf events. Just last week we had a great golf event, and then we did a golf event on a Thursday, followed with a whole group dinner that night, and then golf on Friday. Now, not everybody in the office is a golfer.
Sure.
But even though they weren't a golfer, they were invited to come to dinner, and they were invited to bring their spouse, their loved one to dinner, just for nothing more to get out. We'll just do the random happy hours. And sometimes the random happy hours are planned in advance, and sometimes the random happy hours can be just spontaneous. You hate to sometimes do sometimes the spontaneous ones, just because sometimes people have plans, and you're going to have less attendance because they already have plans. So you got to kind of plan ahead a little bit. But I'm also fortunate that I've also surrounded myself with other organizations like Creative, where we do a lot of business with them, and they just want to host a happy hour. And it's great. They want to coordinate it, and it might only cost a few $100 for a happy hour for that person to pay for it, or I pay for it, but they're the one that kind of brings it together to make it happen.
Yeah.
So sometimes we let them do it, sometimes we do it. But we also like to celebrate in my office everybody's birthdays and everybody's work anniversaries. We bring in breakfasts, we bring in lunches, we just do all kinds of stuff. Just, like you say, you work with these people 10 hours a day. This is your work family. And sometimes you spend more time with your work family than you do your real family, because when you're home with your real family, sometimes you spend part of that time in bed and you're sleeping, not really with them. Right. So I think it's important to just always just have a little fun, so you can work hard when it's time to work hard, but then you can play hard when it's time to play hard, but then it's also time to relax hard when it's time to relax hard. So I get to go on trips every year. I have a variety of trips I get to go on. I like to take people in my staff with me on these trips, and I rotate it around. So I take them and their loved one, or a couple people with their loved ones and spouses on these trips with me, just because my success is not because of me. My success is because of all of us in the team. And even though it's my name that gets to go on these trips, I want to bring somebody else with me and show them that their hard work matters to me.
Yeah.
And I try to treat them like royalty when we go on these trips, and treat them as if I'm being treated by another company.
I think that one of the things you hit on so far that we've talked about. Well, so far we've talked about hiring the right people, finding that right work ethic and that personality, but then the acknowledgement. I really feel that people really want to feel appreciated, and that's super important. So we're going to swing the other side of the pendulum here, which is, so you bring somebody in, and you've got this culture that you've built. And how do you, we were talking about this a little bit before, but what do you do when you have somebody who's either not buying in, or maybe, the last thing you want is, the locker room cancer?
Oh, you want to swing there.
I want to swing that way because, we've talked about the good and making all the right moves, but sometimes, somebody slips through an interview. Because there are people that are fantastic interviewers, and then you like, who is this person? Any experience that way?
Yeah. So let me give a little build up to this. I'm a big believer in, when you're hiring somebody, you find candidates and you put them through several interviews, probably 3 at least, I would say. But today, somebody else in my office would have the first 2 interviews and narrow it down to like 2 candidates, and then I would be in for the 3rd interview with that same person. Back in the day, we would have the whole office interview everybody that we brought in. So if there was 3 of us in the office and we're trying to hire person number 4, all 3 of us are going to interview that person, because we all have different questions, and then we all hear the other person's answers a little bit differently. So we all get to talk about it. That way, if we hire the right person, we're all buying in that that's the right person. But if we don't like that person, then we don't want to hire that person. If we make a mistake, then we've all made that mistake. It wasn't the one person that hired somebody that brought that cancer in the office and caused toxicity. We all made that mistake. So, yes, we've made mistakes. I've brought somebody in, and I think we had terminated somebody within 3 weeks. It didn't take us long for all of us to completely agree that was a complete disaster.
Yeah.
Her resume must be wrong. Her references must have just completely lied.
Yeah.
Her work ethic and that kind of stuff was just awful. And we even moved her out of state up here. And I had a contract with her that said, she has to be with me for 6 months, or she's going to have to pay me back for the moving cost. Well, she paid me back for the moving cost because we fired her in 3 weeks, and we had lots of documentation for it. But I've also had people who've been with me for longer than that. They'll a year, 2 years, 8 years, that turn out to be cancer. And just, sometimes people change. Maybe they start off to be a good person, and then greed got to them, or something in their personal life is so heavy on them that just affects their work life. I mean, we're human. But sometimes people are not who you think they are, and it takes you a while to identify that. And so that cancer that's in the office, that toxicity, you got to get rid of it. A fun story that I've shared a few times is, we had a lady in our office that everybody else in my office said, if there was one person in my office that was bulletproof, it was this one lady. She was the most important person to me in the office. She was the smartest person. She did the most stuff. She was the top person. She was Mark's number 1 person. But over time, she was great to me, but not great to anybody else. And I also had the other people in the office were also great. And I would never have said that she was my number 1 person. I think everybody viewed her as my number 1 person. But I had amazing people. Well, long story short, I had to terminate her because there was just too much drama and cancer that one person was causing.
Yeah.
Stirring the pot, accusations, doesn't accept responsibility when they make a mistake, wants to call somebody else out on any mistake that they ever make. And we didn't want that culture. And that was quite some time ago. And everybody in my office that was with me when we fired that lady is still with me today. And I think that kind of was a shot across the bow that let everybody know that I'm here for you.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not going to let you I'm not going to fire somebody because you whine about something or somebody whines about something once or twice. No big deal. But when it's over and over and over, and I have proof and I have enough information coming in from multiple people, we don't want that toxicity. And I want my people to come to work every day thinking that I love my employer, I love my job, I love what I do, I'm getting paid a good amount, he treats me fairly, I get to get off early, I have 3-day weekends. I want them to feel like I love my job and I matter. I enjoy what I do, not only for Mark, but for Affinity, but for the clients that I'm working with. I want them to feel that. And if they do that, they get that buy-in. And that means I'm doing something right with the culture. So yeah, you have cancers, but the thing is you got to rip that Band-Aid off. And if you don't rip that Band-Aid off, then you're just being a softie. And a lot of it has to boil down to, I need you and I don't have a replacement for you. Well, as soon as you find that that person's a cancer, my recommendation is start the interviewing process. And if you have to do it secretly, do it secretly. If you need to do it out of the office, do it out of the office. But get somebody lined up so as soon as you're ready to terminate that person, you got the next person coming in to replace that person. Because I think that's the number one reason why business owners or financial advisors don't terminate somebody is the fear of what they're doing. I got to do their job now until I find the next person. I got to wear all those hats again. Okay, well, keep that person on, deal with the toxicity for a short period of time, but be very aggressive and go out there and find that next person, interview them, get them ready to go. So as soon as you fire one, you can bring on somebody else. Now, I don't really like that, but I'm just trying to be strategic here, that you don't want your other people to be affected in a negative way because you had to fire somebody and now they have a massive workload.
Yeah.
So what's the worst is giving a whole bunch of people a bunch more workload because you're one person's short in the staff, or can we deal with a little extra toxicity for a little while longer so we can have a smooth transition to the next person? It's like, what's the lesser of two evils?
Sure.
And I've tried it both ways. And I think it just depends on who you're getting rid of and what their job was and what the people around them can do to replace that job for a meantime. You know, what can you do to balance that?
That toxicity really can, that can spread and affect just about every facet of the business, because it really, when your work family and you've got issues, instead of focusing on what everyone should be focusing on, they're having this distraction.
Well, it's a distraction at work.
Yep.
It slows them down from being efficient at work. But more importantly, they're taking their work home to their family, and they're probably saying things to their family members about work in a negative way, or having thoughts in their head about work in a negative way. And I don't want that. And if that other person in the office is causing that much toxicity to somebody else in the office, I got to deal with it. So I like to think I'm very fair. I don't micromanage at all. I want to give everybody complete space to do your job. I will help where I can help, but I just don't want to micromanage you. But I also don't tolerate crap. I don't tolerate toxicity. And so if I think someone's made a mistake and they just want to brush it off or they want to blame somebody else, I got real problems with that.
Yeah.
And in our industry, there's so many things that we could do for clients where other companies, whether it be an insurance organization or a broker-dealer, mistakes can be made. Or sometimes it's our mistake, and we pass it off on somebody else. I don't really tolerate that very well. Make a mistake, it's okay, you're human. Let's deal with it, let's learn from it, let's share it with the others so that we can all learn from that, so we can all try to avoid that same mistake down the road. And when you have that mentality, I think everybody feels free to be themselves and not be fearful of making a mistake.
I think your practice, I think what you said at the start, one of the key things to the success of your culture and your practice is you. And when I say that, I do always say that when you come up, like Mark Roberts is, you're so consistent. And I think that in a culture setting, as the leader of your practice, your staff knows what they're going to get with Mark all the time, firm, fair, and consistent. But I think that consistency in your personality, I think that is a big driver of the success, because they know the things you'll tolerate, the things you won't, but you're consistent with that. And I've been in places and seen practices where someone's not consistent with behavior across the board. And the story you told about letting that person go that everyone thought was numero uno, that just speaks to the consistency of expectation. It's fantastic. You had a heck of a practice.
Well, it's my business, and I want to run my business the way I want to run my business. And I find that less toxicity, less drama allows us all to be more efficient, all to be more focused, so we can do a better job for our clients and end up ultimately doing more production every year.
Yep, that's a good thing.
Yep, I love it. I love what I do.
Well, Mark, thank you for being on the podcast. We're going to have you on a ton of times. Lots to dig in and unpack with you and your practice. So thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me.
This podcast is for financial professional use only and not for use with the general public. The information provided is the exclusive property of Creative One and is protected by copyright and other intellectual property laws of the United States. This material has been prepared for informational and educational purposes only. It is not intended to provide, and should not be relied upon for, accounting, legal, tax or investment advice. Creative One is not responsible for the results of programs discussed on this podcast or any liability stemming from the use of it. Although we may promote or recommend the services offered by this company, agents are ultimately responsible for the use of any materials or services and agree to comply with the compliance requirements of their broker-dealer and registered investment advisor, if applicable, and the insurance carriers they represent. Copyright 2022, Creative One Marketing Corporation.